You're listening to The Bold Blueprint with Claire Bartlett. This is the go-to podcast for business owners who are ready to be bold, step into your power and claim the success that you deserve. So whether you're an established business or just starting out, this podcast is your weekly dose of unapologetic inspiration, empowerment and actionable advice to take your business to the next level. Today's episode is brought to you by Xero Accounting Software, a champion of small businesses and a proud sponsor of the Bold Blueprint podcast. Managing your business finances can feel overwhelming, but Xero simplifies it all and gives you the power to keep your books in order and your mind on growth. Xero have amazingly offered a 50% discount off your first 3 months with them. So if you'd like to take advantage of this amazing deal, just follow the link in the show notes. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of The Bold Blueprint. I am Claire, your host, and I am so excited today because this is our 50th ever episode of the podcast. And I can't quite believe that we have made it here after, just having that little thought one day that I like to talk and I have quite a lot to say that I wanted to share with the world. And I decided I was going to start a podcast. And here we are, 50 episodes later. And it's honestly absolutely blown my mind. We have been listened to over 3,000 times in over 40 countries, which is just insane to me that people all over the world are listening to my voice as they're walking the dog or cleaning the house or whatever it is that you might be doing. And I absolutely love to hear from all of you. The messages that I receive really warm my heart. So I thought I would do something slightly different today to mark the occasion. And I'm going to be talking to you about the lessons I have learned since launching this podcast, what I've learned about the process of podcasting, about the world of podcasting, and some of them might be quite surprising to you. So I want to start out by talking about sponsorship for a podcast and monetizing your podcast, because this is probably the question that I get asked the most is how I got my sponsor, who are Xero, who have been incredible and supported this podcast before it was even born, when it was just a little glimmer in my eye. And I think actually that is one of the main lessons I've learned is that it can probably be quite hard to get a sponsor for a podcast that is in the early days of production, when your audience numbers might be quite low, your download numbers are low, and it's not looking that, I suppose, fruitful for a sponsor to get involved in. But because I had those conversations with Xero before I'd even launched, I was just selling the dream. I was bringing them along for the ride. I was explaining my passion, why I wanted to do it, who I was going to be speaking to, who the ideal audience was, and the whole purpose of the podcast. So it was very easy for them to get on board and support me through that first season. They are really passionate about helping small businesses, and the ideal audience of this podcast was all about supporting small businesses with the day-to-day running of their business and opening up conversations that sometimes people don't always speak about openly, and feel like they can't share with the world. So they were really supportive right from the very start. And I think that is honestly why I was able to get such an amazing sponsor so early in the podcast, is because I didn't have any statistics or figures to share with them, because it was just an idea. And I think that can really help you. And this is like such a stumbling block for people, because people speak to me all the time like, oh, I really want to start a podcast, but I don't know where to start. And I can't believe that you've had a sponsor all the way through. But sponsorship is just one element of monetizing a podcast. And yes, it's been a great one for me, a great partnership with Xero. And I really love everything they stand for. So I knew it was a good collaboration. And again, I actually think that is a really important factor here to mention, that you want to find sponsors that actually work for you and will actually benefit your audience. I could have gone and approached I don't know, I'm trying to think off the top of my head, like a window company or, a flower company. But they wouldn't necessarily be on topic for my podcast, for the things that I'm going to be discussing, and for the audience, for the people that would be listening. So it was really important for me to find one that not only aligned with my values and my vision, but also would add value to my audience. So that's something really important to keep in mind. But yeah, if it's the beginning of a podcast, it's all about selling the dream because the numbers aren't there yet. The numbers can come, but you can't rely on them in the beginning. And you don't want to have to wait 3, 4, 5 seasons in to really be hitting the statistics that would be attractive to a sponsor. I am blessed that Zero have stayed with me through all of the episodes that I've done, all of the seasons. And hopefully, who knows, they might stay with me for a long time to come yet. But yeah, the biggest lesson I learned, and I didn't even realize it was a lesson to learn at the beginning. I was just following my heart and reaching out to people. But actually, turns out that I'm massively in the minority for looking for sponsors before I'd launched, and I did it the right way, completely unknowingly. So, my biggest tip for you, if you are looking to launch a podcast, is to try and get a sponsor on board before you've even launched your first episode. Sell them the dream, get them on board, get them involved in the whole process, and really bring them in as part of the family of your podcast brand. The next thing is that it really is not actually very easy in that it takes a lot of dedication. There's a lot of processing, there's a lot of time that it can take. And planning, what am I going to speak about each week, and also thinking about guests. So, my biggest my biggest tip here would be to make sure that you are enjoying it. Make sure that you're talking about things that you are really passionate about, because then it becomes easy. If I tried to speak to you for 30 minutes, an hour on IT, I wouldn't really know what I was talking about. Definitely not enough to fill that length of time. And it's not that interesting a topic for me. So it wouldn't be fun. So I make sure that I'm always talking about things that I really enjoy or personal experiences. And if there is a topic like IT and tech and solutions that I know my audience would benefit from, but I don't know enough about, you find a guest. So, there's always a solution. If there's topics that your audience would be really interested in, but it's just not your zone of genius, you're not, an absolute expert in that space, that's where having guest experts come in can be really, really beneficial for you. If you look through the history of my podcast, the very first season I did was entirely guests. Every single episode I had a guest on. And really, that was, when I look back, it was a confidence thing. It was because I was nervous about just speaking to you all solidly, just my voice for 30 minutes, an hour, whatever it might be. And I wasn't sure that people would be that interested in it. So I thought to myself that if I brought in guest experts who would also be sharing it with their audience, one, it would help me grow the podcast, but two, it would take that pressure off me to be the sole sort of entertainer, if you will, of the podcast. But that was great and it did work. And I thoroughly enjoyed every single conversation that I had in that series. But what I did realize afterwards was that people are coming to the podcast because they want to hear from me. They are following me. They're already in my space because they like what I have to say and they like how I say it and how I share my views and opinions. So now I have a really nice blend. I still have guests because I am not an expert in every area of business. And personally, I just love a natter. I love a chit chat. So I do really enjoy having guests on, which again comes down to doing something that you love and making sure that you are getting joy from it. But I also have a lot of episodes that are just me. So I have like the perfect balance of both. What that did for me in that first season, there was a lot of pressure of making sure that I had a good guest expert for each week of the series. And now I don't have to find a guest. I don't have to have a solo episode. I've thrown the rule book out and I can do whatever I want whenever I want. As long as I have an episode going out every Wednesday, then I know I'm good. And that's really quite sort of freeing, and it's brought the joy into the podcast. So, finding out what works for you is so important. Try both out, try all of the different strategies behind a podcast, and you will find a way that works best for you and your time restraints and what you're trying to build. Again, that kind of leads into that I've rebranded. So this season, season 3, is under the Bold Blueprint. But previously to that, it was called the Female Founders Podcast. I have many reasons for rebranding, but that scares a lot of people. And a lot of people would feel stuck in that initial brand and would think they either needed to completely scrap everything, or they would need to, just stay with that branding forever. There are no limitations in podcasting. I mean, in business in general, you can rebrand, you can pivot, you can do whatever you want whenever you want. And for me, the old branding felt a bit too um, restricting. And I didn't want to just speak to female founders. I wanted to speak to all small business and entrepreneurs who needed my help and who needed the tips and tricks and, just wanted to hear me chat away every week. So that's why one of the main reasons that we did the rebrand. It had no impact whatsoever on my listening numbers. It I didn't make a big deal out of it at all. I explained it in the first episode. I did some social media posts about it, introducing the new brand. But for me, I didn't change any of the colors, any of the branding, to be honest, apart from the name, because I loved all of my branding. It was just that the name itself didn't sit right. So it was quite an easy transition for me. But yeah, huge tip here. Please don't feel pigeonholed into something that you created on a whim one day. I created the podcast really not looking so far in the future, not thinking about season 3 or 4 or 5. I just wanted to start and see where it took me. And in doing that and realizing that, yes, I absolutely loved it. Yes, people were interested in it. And yes, it was something that had longevity in it. Then I started thinking on the bigger picture. And actually, that brand that I'd created in the beginning wasn't aligned with that bigger picture. And you 100% can absolutely change and pivot as much as you want to. Some of the biggest podcasts out there have pivoted. I know the Gold Digger podcast, which is one of my favorite ones by Jenna Kutcher. She's pivoted loads of times through the history of her podcast. And again, she says exactly the same, that it never actually impacted her podcast at all, but it can feel quite daunting in that moment where you're doing that transition. But yeah, people don't really care. They just are interested in the content. They don't care about that little thumbnail. As long as they are, already an invested listener, they will stick with you. One of probably the biggest surprises to me is when it comes to guest experts. Now, I have had a whole range of guest experts on this podcast. I have had some absolutely huge names that have thousands of followers. And I've had some small business owners that have a few hundred followers. I've really tried to cover every aspect. But what I did think, the story that I had told myself in the beginning, was that the bigger the guest's audience, the better that would be for my podcast. Which you would think would make sense, right? If they have thousands of followers and they come on my podcast, thousands of their followers would be interested to hear them on the podcast and it would bring them into my space. That actually doesn't seem to be the case. What I've learned is that if they already have hugely successful businesses and have huge audiences, they are not that bothered about sharing that they've been on your podcast. It's not that big a deal. They're on podcasts all the time. And for them, they might put a post out, they might not even put anything out on it, but it's just another run of the mill day for them. If you have a smaller business owner who's sort of just at the beginning of their journey or still really in that micro business phase, to them, it's a massive deal to be on a podcast. It's them really showcasing their expertise and that they're not actually that sort of well known for yet. So they really do shout about being on your podcast and they share it to their audience and they really love being on your podcast. It means something for them. So actually, some of my best successful episodes are with people that are sort of just on the cusp of really making it and are still in that growth phase. So that was a massive learning curve for me because I genuinely thought the bigger the guest, the better that would be for my podcast. And it's really not turned out that way at all. So, yeah, that was a real shock to me, actually, because it would just make sense, you would think. But then when you do actually think about it, when you're inside it and you realize that actually being on your podcast is not that big a deal for them, it's actually really lovely then to support the micro and really small business owners who are still on their way up and making themselves known because you're helping them, you're giving them a platform. And that's what this podcast is actually all about. It's about supporting those micro and small business owners to really, really grow. So that brings me more joy, but also it helps the brand awareness of the podcast because then all of their audience, even though it's smaller than some of those bigger names, those audience are more inclined to come and listen to your podcast and then join my world. So it's definitely one of the biggest learning curves. And actually, yes, like I said, it really surprised me, but I actually kind of love the outcome of that one, that I can support those smaller business owners and still really successfully grow my podcast. Yeah, probably the biggest learning curve, and I have sort of hinted on this already, is the dedication that is required and how absolutely critical forward planning is in a podcast. And that was, like I said, very difficult when I was having guests on regularly because I was always having to think about what guests were coming up, etc. But the biggest thing is you do not want your podcast to ever feel like a burden. And if you are there, so my podcast come out on a Wednesday morning, and there has been a handful of times that on a Tuesday night at like 10 p.m., I'm there finishing the editing and thinking, oh my God, I can't go to bed until this podcast is out. Like, that is no way to run your business, to run your podcast, or live your life. It is really important to have everything pre-recorded in plenty of time and have like a bank of episodes that you can pull on at any point. And that's really, really sort of game changing to keeping that joy in your podcast and keeping it running smoothly and effectively. There was a time where I was like super on it when it was quite a new thing. And I'd actually pre recorded nearly all of my season one before I even launched the first episode. I was so on it because I didn't really know the process yet. I didn't know how long it would take me to edit episodes, and get them ready for publishing. So there was a lot of nervous energy around the podcast. And as I got more relaxed with it and I understand the process now, and actually it doesn't take very long at all for me. I'm a very light editor. I know some people really go to town, but for me, I like to keep it very natural, and I just pretty much take out um ironically, some of the ums and ahs. I will leave that one in now just to show you all. But I sometimes, if it's really overwhelming, there's a load of them, I will take out some of the ums and ahs, some of the filler words, and that's pretty much it. The rest sort of stays the same. So it's really a light process for me. And again, that was a conscious decision because I knew I couldn't overwhelm myself with the workload. And I don't personally feel like it needs to be perfect. You all know, you've been in my world long enough know that you know one of my favorite sayings is progress, not perfection. And I will always move forward rather than lose stupid hours on trying to make anything perfect because perfection does not exist. So yes, forward planning is really key. And if somewhere sort of at the end of season two, where I'd let that slip a bit, things were really taking off in other areas of my business and my focus had sort of come away from the podcast. So I was scrambling a bit in a couple of the weeks to get the episodes out. And I had to sit myself down and have a real strong talk like this is not sustainable. And then you end up rushing things and it just doesn't work. And then I don't enjoy it as much. So I make sure now that I have a bank of episodes. I always try and have at least 3 episodes already recorded so I can utilize them at any point. So if I do come to a Monday or even a Tuesday day and I'm like, oh my God, I haven't got that episode scheduled yet, I know I've got one at least recorded. But if I do find that I have some time, I will get them fully edited and fully ready and even scheduled way in advance. And that just takes all the pressure off. And then sometimes it will pop up on my phone that it's, oh, a new episode, because obviously I follow them on Spotify and Apple just to make sure that they go out. And sometimes I'll get a notification on my phone that a new episode's gone out. I'm like, oh, it's Wednesday. I'd forgotten. So that's the bit that makes it feel easy is to be prepared and have stuff pre-recorded, pre-edited, ready, scheduled, and as long in advance as you possibly can. So it's a joyous process then. It's just an easy process for you to follow. And then finally, I suppose it's the overwhelming feeling of, and I hinted at this at the beginning, but like, oh my gosh, people all over the world are interested in what I have to say. And hopefully, I'm helping businesses all over the world. And that is an insane feeling. It's so incredible. And especially when someone takes the time to reach out to you or tag you on, Instagram or whatever, it really does mean the world. And I think that's why podcasts are so amazing, because we send, everyone hints on about email lists are so critical. You always need to be building your email list. And yes, email lists are powerful. Yes, they are a great way of nurturing your audience and warming them up and keeping them engaged in your world. But a really amazing open rate for an email is like 30 to 40%. People are really, really happy if 30 to 40% of their audience are reading their content. With a podcast, you get like 60% of the audience that are already engaged and following you I think it's at least 60% will listen to the episode. And the biggest thing is that a huge proportion, a huge amount will listen. If they start listening to a podcast episode, they listen the whole way through. So I think it's like 78%. So that's like a 78% open rate on an email. You are reaching and they're hearing everything that you have to say. And that's so powerful. And it's actually not that difficult to become a really successful podcast, because there's only 700,000 active podcasts in the entire world. Which, when you think about the human population, 700,000 is absolutely minor. It's a really small amount. And most podcasts don't get past, I think it's like 10 episodes. So the fact that we are here on number 50 is amazing. And the reaction that we're getting, the audience that we're growing, and the people that are following us and joining us on this journey really feels incredible. So I just want to really thank you all so much for being a part of the Bold Blueprint world, and enjoying the episodes. As I've already mentioned, I absolutely love to hear from you all. So please find me on Instagram. It's CS_Bartlett. Give me a tag, drop me a DM, tell me your favorite thing about the podcast. Which was your favorite episode? The other thing that is really surprising is you feel like people would only ever listen to the latest episode. But actually, when someone discovers your podcast, they then go back and listen right from the first episode, which is so incredible. So there's never any wasted content. So on social media, when you post, you send a post out, in a week that post is dead and no one's really discovering it anymore. But on a podcast, it doesn't matter how old the episode is, people will always be discovering it and always listening to it. So it's like it's like an eternal content feed for your audience and an eternal lead generation for your business. So it really is a no-brainer. Yes, it can be hard. Yes, there's a lot of dedication that is required to keep it consistent. And yes, it can be difficult if you choose the route of having guests all the time, or, trying to find that sponsor early. It can feel daunting, but you really do not need a lot of expensive technology. You really don't. The key thing is a microphone, because obviously it is an audio experience for people. So trying to start out with the best microphone that you can. But I know loads of podcast hosts that do it on Zoom. They just record them on Zoom. They use their headphone, Apple Pod microphones, or they just record it on their phone. It does not have to be perfect to start the journey. Remember, guys, progression, not perfection. If you have a dream of having a podcast, just record your first episode. Just do it. and then figure out the rest one step at a time. I say this all the time, but any goal, if you look at the whole picture, will feel too overwhelming. If you break it down into small steps and just tackle that one step at a time, you will have a successful podcast before you even know it. So that is it for me today. A nice, short and sweet one. But again, just thank you so, so much for being a part of the Bold Blueprint world. And if you have any questions, I might end this series with a Q&A. So if you have any questions at all, please feel free to DM me or reach out to me on any of the platforms, and I will answer that question for you at the end of season 3, which is only in 2 or 3 episodes. I can't believe it, but we are so nearly there. And then I have grand plans for season 4. So I cannot wait to tell you all about that. But for now, enjoy the rest of your week. Keep being bold, keep making amazing movements in your business, and keep pushing forward. And I will speak to you all soon. I hope you have enjoyed today's episode, which was brought to you by Xero Accounting Software, a champion of small businesses and a proud sponsor of the Bold Blueprint podcast. If you're running a small business and you are dreaming big, then Xero is here to help make those dreams a reality. Xero is all about supporting entrepreneurs just like you, who are not just running businesses, but are also changing the game. So whether you're just starting out or you're scaling up, join a global community of small businesses who trust Xero to manage their finances efficiently.